Our question at this time concerns the public role of women in the worship of the Lord's church. Oftentimes the question is asked concerning whether or not a woman would be allowed to take a public role, such as preaching. And in fact, I'd had someone ask me about that, about women preaching. Now, is that something that the Lord allows? You know, in this politically correct atmosphere of our society, and in a time in which people are looking for ways in which to change folks' roles and so forth, there are those who would want to say, well, go ahead and allow a woman to preach in a public manner, in a public worship, or to lead songs, or to do other things such as this. And someone may look and say, well, I don't see anything wrong with it. And of course, other people might. But really the question is not whether or not I see anything wrong with it, whether you see anything wrong with it. The question is, what has God said? When you look at the book of 1 Timothy chapter 2, here it's stated very simply this. In 1 Timothy 2 and verse 11, let the women, he says, learn in silence with all subjection. But I suffer not a woman not to teach, nor to usurp authority over the man, but to be in silence. He says, for Adam was first formed, then Eve. And Adam was not deceived, but the woman being deceived was in the transgression. And that's 1 Timothy 2, 11 to 14. And he states there the reasons for a woman not taking that public role. Not to, he says, not to usurp authority over the man. And see, this is where some confusion comes in, because some folks say, well, that means you don't allow a woman to teach anybody anywhere. No, that's not right. You look over the book of Titus in chapter 2, and it talks about older women teaching the younger women. It talks about them having such a role as that. There certainly is something to be said for a godly mother teaching and instructing her children and so forth. And there's a need for that. There is also a role in which she can be a part of in the teaching and instruction that takes place. Even in what you might say a private setting. There, through words and through example, certainly that is necessary. All within the role of not to usurp authority, he says. Now that's where the key is. Somebody says, well, you know, that's just the Apostle Paul. Now that's just him. He was a misogynist. He hated women. He didn't like women and all that, and so he's just putting up this barrier against them. And that's not true at all. In fact, as you look into the words of the Apostle Paul, he says that the words he is speaking are the words of the Lord. The words he is speaking were inspired. They're inspired of God. And so I need to respect that. I need to respect what the Lord has said. It is not a put down of women to do this. It's not a put down of women to say that you cannot usurp authority, but you must not take on that role. In that sense, that's not a put down of women at all. That is just saying there are certain roles men have and there are certain roles that women have. Just the same as you have a role of a man as a husband and a father, and so also the woman as a wife and a mother, so also as those roles are different and yet both needed, so also it is within the Lord's church. Now, a woman can do many things. The Bible talks in Romans 16, first 3 verses about a dear sister Phoebe and how she ministered and how she served and on all the things she did. And she was highly regarded by the apostle. She was highly regarded for her work and for what she did. And in fact, whenever we think about her, he says, as she goes to Rome, he says, you receive her in the Lord. He said, whatever business she has, he said, you make sure and take care of her. Priscilla, the wife of Aquila, was much the same way. Yes, women are held in high esteem and high regard. But concerning that role, the role of a public leader, the role in that sense of in public worship to preach or to lead songs or to have that role of authority over the man. God says you don't need to be doing that. And he gave 2 reasons. Because Adam was first. He said also the woman was deceived. And so for those reasons he says there are certain roles, responsibilities that men have that women do not have. We can talk about elders and deacons the same way. 1 Timothy chapter 3 and other things. So let's respect the roles that God has given to us. Let's respect what God has told us. And when so doing, we will certainly be blessed by God.